The twin suns of the colony world shone weakly in the dusty sky. Heat waves shimmered above the stone streets, and fine grains of sand swirled with every step. Life on this world was not easy. Machines groaned, people hurried, and work never seemed to end. In the middle of it all moved a young alien girl named Nira. She carried tools that looked too heavy for her thin frame. Her blue skin was dull from dust, and her dark eyes were tired. Nira had long ago learned how to move quietly. She did not expect kindness from anyone. To her people, she was weak, too small to be trusted with important work. Whenever there was a hard or dirty task, it was pushed onto her. Others looked past her as though she was invisible. They did not shout at her, but their silence and cold looks cut deeper than words. She had become used to loneliness. On this day, a strange sound filled the air. The people of the colony turned their heads upward. A ship was entering the sky, its engines roaring like thunder. The sound was different from their own machines. It was the sound of humans. The ship descended slowly onto the landing field, sending clouds of dust into the air. The crowd grew excited, because the humans always brought supplies, food, and tools from faraway places. Nira paused at the edge of the crowd. Her thin hands tightened around the tools she carried. She knew she would gain nothing from the ship. No gift, no trade, nothing meant for her. Still, her eyes stayed fixed on the humans as they stepped down from the vessel. They were tall, with skin in many shades, some pale, some dark, some brown. Their clothes were simple but strong, made for work and travel. They moved with calm confidence, as though the heat and dust were nothing. Among them was a man named Sam. His hair was dark, his face steady, and his eyes filled with curiosity as he studied the colony. Unlike the others, his gaze did not sweep past the crowd quickly. He looked as though he wished to understand the place and the people. The work of unloading began. Humans lowered crates from the ship while colony workers hurried to carry them. The crates were heavy, filled with supplies. The stronger ones lifted them easily and walked off with steady steps. Nira, standing at the edge, heard the sharp voice of the overseer call out. "You there? Carry a crate. Move quickly." Her stomach sank, but she obeyed. She rushed forward, setting her bundle of tools aside, and bent to lift one of the wooden boxes. The weight pressed down on her arms at once. Her thin body shook with effort. She tried to hold on, but the crate slipped and fell to the ground with a thud. Several workers nearby gave her the usual looks of disappointment. One muttered under his breath. Another smirked. Nira lowered her head, ashamed. She bent again to try, even though her arms felt weak and her chest burned. Before she could fail a second time, a shadow fell across her. A pair of strong hands reached down and steadied the crate. She looked up quickly, expecting scorn. Instead, she met the calm eyes of Sam. He gave her a small, kind smile. "Here," he said softly. "Let's do this together." Nira froze in surprise. No one had ever spoken to her in that tone. For a moment, she thought she had imagined it. But Sam nodded at her, waiting patiently. Slowly, she placed her hands on the other side of the crate. Together they lifted it. The weight that had nearly crushed her before felt lighter now. Side by side, they carried it across the dusty ground and set it down with the others. When the task was finished, Sam brushed the dust from his hands. His smile remained, warm and simple. "See? Easier when shared." Nira's lips trembled. She wanted to answer, but the words would not come. Her voice had grown unused to kindness. At last she whispered, "Thank you." Sam nodded as if her thanks mattered greatly. Then he turned back to help unload another crate, moving with steady steps. Nira stood frozen in place, her heart racing faster than it had in years. She replayed the moment again and again in her mind. No laughter, no cold looks, no harsh words. Only help. Only kindness. For the first time in her memory, someone had seen her struggle and chosen not to turn away. The rest of the day passed, but Nira barely noticed her aching arms or tired feet. Her thoughts stayed with that moment. She remembered the sound of his voice, the ease of lifting the crate together, and the strange warmth in her chest when he smiled. That evening, when the suns had set and the sky filled with stars, Nira sat alone outside her small shelter. The colony had grown quiet, but her mind was still alive with memory. She hugged her knees and looked upward. The stars were countless, stretching into infinity. She wondered if all humans were like Sam, or if he was different. Her lips curved into the smallest smile, fragile but real. It was the first smile she had felt in a very long time. Deep within her heart, something stirred. It was not strength yet, and not confidence, but it was something even more rare. It was hope. The next morning, the colony buzzed with noise as workers rushed to sort the human supplies. The landing field was crowded with crates stacked high, tools scattered on the ground, and people moving in every direction. The twin suns were already burning bright, and the air shimmered with heat. Nira walked slowly through the busy street, clutching a small bundle of rags that she had been told to deliver to the repair yard. Her arms ached from the heavy work of the day before, but she kept her head down and moved quietly, hoping not to draw attention. As she passed near the landing field, her eyes wandered toward the human ship. Workers shouted orders while the humans calmly organized their cargo. Nira's gaze searched almost without meaning to, and then she saw him. Sam was standing near a large crate, speaking to another worker. His voice carried lightly, calm and steady, even in the hot air. Nira's steps slowed. The memory of the previous day returned so clearly that her chest tightened. She remembered his hands steadying the crate, his smile that had carried no scorn, and his words spoken as though she mattered. She shook her head quickly, forcing herself to move on. Such things did not happen twice. But fate had its own plans. Later that afternoon, Nira was ordered to help move another set of supplies. She walked toward the field again, though her legs were tired. A crate stood at the edge of the stack, and she bent to pull it closer. This one was smaller, yet her weak arms still struggled. She braced her feet and tried to lift, but the box tilted dangerously. Just as it was about to slip from her grasp, another hand reached out. Nira looked up, and once again, it was Sam. He caught the other side of the crate easily and steadied it. His tone was the same as before, calm, without judgment. Careful. This one's tricky. Nira's breath caught in her throat. She nodded quickly, too shy to speak, and together they carried the crate across the dusty ground. When they set it down, Sam brushed the dust from his hands and gave a small smile. There we go. No harm done. Nira lowered her eyes. I can manage, she whispered, though her voice was unsure. I know, Sam said. But even strong people need a hand sometimes. The words struck her more deeply than she expected. Strong people. No one had ever placed her in that group before. She wanted to reply but found no voice. Sam did not press her. He simply nodded and turned back to the ship, already moving another crate. For the rest of the day, Nira worked quietly, yet her thoughts stayed fixed on the human's words. Strong people need a hand sometimes. She repeated the sentence to herself again and again, as though it carried a meaning greater than the weight of any crate. That evening, the colony grew quiet as the sun sank below the horizon. Workers returned to their shelters, and the air cooled with the coming night. Nira sat near a broken water pipe, trying to rest. Her thin arms ached, and her shoulders felt heavy. She touched a bruise on her arm and winced softly. The sound of footsteps made her glance up. Sam was walking by, carrying a small case from the ship. When he saw her sitting there, he stopped. His eyes softened as he stepped closer. You're hurt, he said gently. Nira shook her head quickly, lowering her arm. "It's nothing." Sam set the case down and opened it. Inside were neat rows of supplies, some wrapped in clean cloth. He pulled out a small roll of bandages. "Here. These will help." Nira froze, staring at the simple white cloth. No one had ever offered her such a thing before. Her people would have told her to keep working, to ignore the pain. Yet this human knelt in the dust, holding out care as if it was the most natural thing in the world. Her hands trembled as she accepted the bandage. She did not know what to say. At last she whispered, why are you kind to me?" Sam looked at her for a moment, then answered simply, "Because you deserve kindness." The words struck her harder than the heat of the suns, harder than the weight of any burden. They echoed inside her like a sound she had never known. Deserve kindness. She had never believed such a thing about herself. Sam stood, giving her space. "Keep it," he said, nodding at the bandage. "It's yours." Then he picked up his case and walked back toward the ship, leaving her alone with the quiet night. Nira held the bandage tightly in her hand. Her chest rose and fell with quick breaths. She stared at the simple cloth as though it were a treasure. Slowly, her lips curved into the smallest smile. She whispered the words to herself, as though repeating them might make them real. "I deserve kindness." For the first time in her life, she dared to believe it. The suns rose again, casting long shadows across the stone paths of the colony. Workers hurried through the morning dust, carrying crates, fixing machines, and shouting orders. For most, the day was the same as every other. But for Nira, something felt different. She had tucked the small bandage Sam gave her into the folds of her clothing. It was simple cloth, nothing more, but she treated it as though it were rare treasure. Every time her eyes caught its edge, hidden but close, she felt a warmth that eased the cold corners of her heart. Still, the colony gave her no rest. That morning she was ordered to help repair a broken water pump on the far side of the settlement. The pump was heavy and rusted, and Nira's arms strained as she turned the bolts with her thin hands. The others working nearby spoke among themselves, never including her. When she stumbled on the uneven ground, no one offered a hand. By midday, her arms were sore, and her knees carried fresh bruises. She sat for a short moment, wiping the sweat from her brow. She wanted to keep working, but her body begged for rest. It was then that she noticed someone standing not far away. Sam had come to the repair yard, carrying a small tool kit from the ship. His steps were calm, his eyes scanning the broken machines. When his gaze found Nira, he paused. He seemed to study her quietly for a moment before walking over. "You've been working since morning," he said, his voice steady but gentle. Nira lowered her head quickly. "It is my duty," she replied in a small voice. Sam crouched down beside her, placing his toolkit on the ground. "Duties are important. But you're not a machine. You need care too." Nira did not know how to answer. Her people never spoke like that. To them, her pain was weakness, nothing more. She tried to hide her arms, but Sam's eyes caught the mark of a fresh bruise near her wrist. He frowned slightly, then opened his kit and pulled out a small pack of clean cloths. "Here," he said, offering one. Nira shook her head quickly. "I will be fine." Sam's voice was calm, without force. "It's not about being fine. It's about not carrying pain longer than you need to." His words surprised her. Slowly, she reached out and accepted the cloth. Her hands trembled as she wrapped it around her wrist. Sam helped carefully, showing her how to tie the knot so it stayed firm but not tight. His touch was steady, filled with patience. When it was done, Nira stared at the clean bandage. A simple piece of cloth, yet it felt like a shield against the endless coldness she had always known. She found her voice at last. "Why do you help me?" Sam looked at her with steady eyes. Because everyone needs someone to care. Even the strongest. Especially the ones who feel alone. The words sank deep into her heart. She lowered her gaze, unsure how to reply. No one had ever spoken to her in that way. The sound of voices rose from the other workers nearby, and Nira grew nervous, afraid they would see. But Sam did not seem to care. He stood and offered his hand to help her up. She hesitated, then slowly placed her hand in his. He pulled her gently to her feet. "Come," he said. "Let's fix this pump together." They worked side by side. Sam used tools from his kit, teaching Nira how to handle them with care. His patience was endless. When she made a mistake, he did not scold. He explained, showing her how to try again. Slowly, she began to relax, her hands steadier as she turned the bolts and adjusted the pipes. By the time the pump released a stream of clean water, Nira felt a quiet pride bloom inside her. For the first time, her work had not been dismissed or mocked. It had been guided, respected. Sam stepped back, wiping his hands on a cloth. "Good work," he said with a smile. Nira's heart lifted at the words. No one had ever praised her like that before. She lowered her eyes, but a small smile touched her lips. As the suns began to sink in the sky, Sam prepared to leave. Nira watched him walk toward the landing field, her chest heavy with something she could not name. She whispered softly, as though speaking only to herself, "Good work." She repeated the words again and again, holding them close like a secret treasure. That night, as stars lit the sky, Nira sat outside her shelter once more. The colony was quiet, but inside her, thoughts stirred like never before. She touched the bandage on her wrist and thought of Sam's steady voice, his patience, and his words. "You're not a machine. You need care too." For the first time in her life, she believed it might be true. The days passed slowly in the colony, but for Nira, they no longer felt the same. Where once her hours were filled only with silence and wait, now they carried a faint spark of warmth. The memory of Sam's words and actions stayed with her. His kindness was not loud or showy, yet it lingered, giving her strength in small moments when her body grew weak or her spirit felt heavy. Each morning, Nira still carried tools or lifted crates as she always had, but she no longer felt invisible. Every time she saw Sam on the field, her heart lifted, even if he only gave a small nod in greeting. The nod was simple, but it told her something powerful, that she existed, that someone saw her. One afternoon, while workers gathered near the landing field, Nira found herself standing closer to the human ship than usual. Sam was repairing a broken latch on one of the supply crates. When he noticed her, he waved her over. "Would you like to help?" he asked. Nira hesitated. No one had ever invited her to join in work willingly. Usually she was ordered, never asked. But Sam's eyes carried no command, only patience. Slowly, she nodded and stepped forward. Sam handed her a small tool, showing her how to turn it against the lock. His voice was calm, guiding her through the steps. When her hand slipped, he gently adjusted her grip, then let her try again. Nira focused, her breath slow, until the latch clicked into place. "You did it," Sam said with quiet cheer. A light smile touched Nira's lips. "It was simple," she replied softly. "Simple, maybe," Sam answered, "but important. Small steps matter." The words stayed with her. Small steps matter. She repeated them in her mind as she walked home that evening. Over the next few days, their paths crossed more often. Sometimes Sam showed her simple human games, using stones as markers on the ground. Other times he told short stories about faraway worlds, describing oceans that stretched endlessly or forests so tall they touched the clouds. Nira listened with wide eyes. She had never left her colony, never dreamed of other skies. In return, she began to share pieces of her own life. She spoke of the strict traditions of her people, of how every role was fixed from birth, and how she had never been considered strong enough for honor. At first her voice shook, but Sam listened quietly, never interrupting, never judging. His silence was not cold like the silence of her people. It was warm, filled with attention. One evening, as the sun sank low, Sam handed her a broken tool and said, "Show me how your people would fix this." Nira blinked in surprise. "You want me to teach?" "Of course," Sam said with a grin. "You know things I don't. Knowledge goes both ways." Her heart swelled at his words. Slowly, she explained how the tool could be mended with the right angle and careful pressure. Sam followed her guidance step by step, nodding at her instructions. When the tool was whole again, he smiled with genuine respect. "Good teacher," he said. Nira's cheeks warmed, but her eyes shone. She had never been called that before. The bond between them grew quietly, like a seed pushing through soil. It was not built on grand actions but on small gestures, each one layering upon the other. A shared smile. A story told. A task done side by side. In each moment, Nira felt a little less broken, a little more alive. Others in the colony began to notice. Some whispered, watching from a distance. They saw the alien girl, once silent and alone, now walking with lighter steps. They saw the human worker speaking with her as though she were his equal. Some shook their heads, unable to understand, but others grew curious. One afternoon, while carrying water, Nira passed a group of workers. To her surprise, one of them nodded at her instead of ignoring her. It was a small gesture, but it made her heart beat faster. Perhaps Sam's kindness was spreading further than she realized. That night, as the stars filled the sky, Nira sat near her shelter and thought about the changes inside her. She remembered Sam's steady voice telling her she deserved kindness, his hands guiding hers on the tools, his laughter when she beat him at the stone game for the first time. These moments played in her mind like sparks of light. For the first time, she began to imagine a future that was not only pain and silence. She imagined walking without fear. She imagined speaking, and others listening. She imagined that she could matter. As she gazed at the stars, Nira whispered softly, "Maybe I am not as weak as they believe." Her words were carried away by the cool night air, but deep in her heart, they stayed. The sound came again the next morning, low and steady, as though something shifted under the ground. Adam crouched near the shelter, pressing his hand against the soil. He felt a faint vibration, like the distant echo of movement. Myra stood nearby, her long frame still, her eyes glowing brighter than ever. "The cycle sharpens my senses," she said quietly. "There is life below. It comes closer." Adam tightened his grip on the crude tool he had made from broken shuttle parts. It was no real weapon, but it was all he had. His heart beat faster as he scanned the empty land around them. The glowing plants pulsed calmly, but their silence made him uneasy. Hours passed, and the vibrations grew stronger. Adam and Myra worked quickly to reinforce the shelter. Adam used panels from the shuttle to build higher walls, while Myra gathered heavier rocks and placed them in a circle around the entrance. Her movements were sharp and focused, though at times her breathing grew heavy, her cycle pulling her between strength and exhaustion. By evening, the ground cracked open. A small tunnel split near the shelter, and from its dark mouth came a faint clicking sound. Adam froze. His eyes locked on the opening as shadows shifted inside. Then the creatures emerged. They were small, no taller than Adam's knee, with thin legs and sharp jaws that gleamed in the pale light. Their bodies shimmered like stone, blending with the ground. Dozens of eyes glowed faintly across their faces. Adam's chest tightened. "What are they?" Myra's voice was steady but low. "Scavengers. They feed on movement and weakness. We must stand firm." The first of the creatures rushed forward, its legs clicking across the rocks. Adam swung his tool clumsily, striking the creature's shell. It cracked, and the scavenger rolled aside, screeching. More followed, their clicking growing louder, filling the air like breaking glass. Before Adam could react, Myra moved. Her body flashed with sudden energy, her cycle pushing her into motion. She struck with precision, her long limbs faster than his eyes could follow. With each movement, she pushed the scavengers back, their sharp jaws snapping uselessly in the air. Adam joined her, swinging his tool whenever one came too close. His arms ached, his breathing harsh, but he refused to stop. For every scavenger he struck, Myra struck 3. She moved like a storm, her glowing eyes sharp with focus. When the last scavenger fell back into the tunnel, the ground grew silent again. The creatures retreated, their clicking fading into the distance. Adam lowered his tool, his arms trembling. "We did it," he whispered. Myra stood tall, her chest rising and falling quickly. The faint glow of her skin pulsed brighter than ever. She turned her head toward Adam, her voice soft but firm. "Without you, I would have lost balance. Together, we endure." Adam nodded, though his body still shook from the fight. He realized how much he had depended on her instincts. Without Myra, the creatures would have overwhelmed them easily. But he also knew she depended on him too, not for strength, but for steadiness. That night, they sat near the shelter, their makeshift fire flickering from burning dried plants. The air was heavy with silence, broken only by the distant hum of the strange moon. Adam leaned against the wall, tired but alert. "Those things will come back," he said. Myra agreed with a small nod. "Yes. They test us. They search for weakness. But they will remember today." Adam studied her face, glowing softly in the firelight. He could see the tension in her shoulders, the way her body shifted between calm and unease. The cycle was pulling her again. He spoke quietly, hoping to ease her mind. "You kept us alive, Myra. I've never seen anyone move like that." Her eyes softened. "The cycle gave me strength, but it also burns me. Without your calm, I might have lost control. You steadied me." Adam thought about her words for a long moment. He realized that humans had something other species did not: an ability to balance fear with patience, to find calm even in danger. That was his strength, even if it did not shine like Myra's glowing skin or sharp movements. The following days were tense. Adam repaired the water collector and searched for more usable plants, while Myra stood watch, her senses tuned to every vibration. Sometimes she shivered, her energy fading suddenly, and Adam stayed close, speaking softly about Earth. Each time, she grew calmer. On the 4th night after the attack, the ground trembled again. Adam and Myra prepared themselves, standing near the shelter with tools and rocks ready. But this time, the scavengers did not attack in full. Instead, they circled at a distance, their glowing eyes watching silently from the shadows. Myra's voice was firm. "They remember. They fear our strength." Adam held his breath, staring at the strange shapes in the dark. Slowly, the scavengers sank back into the tunnels, leaving the surface quiet again. When it was over, Adam sat down, his chest rising and falling with relief. "Maybe they'll leave us alone now." Myra shook her head. "Not forever. But they have learned. For now, we have peace." Adam looked at her glowing eyes, then at the stars above. He realized something important. Survival was not just about building tools or fighting threats. It was about trusting each other to hold steady, even when fear pressed close. And as the pale sun rose over the silent cliffs, Adam felt a new strength inside him. Together, they could face what the moon threw at them. Days turned into weeks on the silent moon. What had first felt like certain doom slowly began to shape into a rhythm of survival. Adam and Myra built a fragile routine, one that balanced his human creativity with her alien instincts. Together, they made the barren world feel a little less hostile. Each morning, Adam checked the water collector. Thin vapor still rose from cracks in the rocks, and the small machine captured drops that filled a container. It was slow work, but every bit of water counted. Myra often sat nearby during these moments, her long fingers resting lightly on the ground. She said she could feel the faint vibrations of the moon and sense if the scavengers stirred below. When the ground remained still, Adam used the time to build. He shaped broken shuttle panels into useful tools, sharp edges for cutting and flat pieces for digging. Myra watched closely, sometimes tilting her head in quiet interest. "You humans see tools where there is only ruin," she said one morning as Adam hammered a bent rod into shape. Adam smiled faintly. "We don't like to give up. If something's broken, we try to make it work again." Her eyes glowed softly as she considered his words. "Perhaps this is why your kind spreads among the stars. You carry hope even when nothing around you gives reason." Those words stayed with Adam as he worked. He had never thought of himself as especially hopeful, but now, on this silent moon, it was the only thing that kept him moving. Myra's cycle was still ongoing, but its sharp edges began to change. She no longer moved with the frantic bursts of energy from before. Instead, her heightened senses allowed her to detect dangers early. She warned Adam when scavengers stirred, giving them time to prepare. She also showed him how to sense faint patterns in the air and ground, skills her people had used for generations. One evening, as they sat near the glowing plants that lit their shelter, Myra guided Adam's hand to the soil. "Close your eyes," she said softly. "Feel the rhythm below. Life always leaves a pattern." Adam obeyed, shutting his eyes. At first, he felt nothing but cold dirt under his palm. But slowly, with Myra's steady guidance, he noticed faint pulses, like distant heartbeats under the surface. His eyes opened in surprise. "I felt it. It's real." Myra gave a small nod. "Now you share the sense. My cycle makes it stronger, but you can learn the first steps. Together, our strengths grow." That night, Adam thought about how strange and powerful this bond had become. He had never expected to learn from an alien in such a personal way. Yet here, cut off from everything familiar, they had no choice but to trust. The scavengers tested them again 2 days later. This time, Adam was ready. He had built a ring of sharpened rods around the shelter. When the small creatures crawled out of the tunnels, they met the barrier first. Myra struck with her sharp precision while Adam used his rods to push them back. The battle was shorter, and the scavengers fled with fewer attacks. When it was over, Adam breathed heavily but smiled. "We're getting better at this." Myra looked at him, her eyes bright. "Because you guide chaos into shape. My cycle gives me strength, but your planning gives it purpose. Without it, I would waste my power." Her words filled Adam with quiet pride. He realized now that humans did not survive by being the strongest or fastest. They survived because they could adapt, because they could take what seemed impossible and find a way forward. In the following days, Adam and Myra built more together. They created stronger walls, collected more plants, and shaped new tools. The shelter grew into something more like a small camp. The glowing plants lit the ground at night, and the air inside felt warmer, almost welcoming. At times, Myra still showed signs of strain. Her body glowed brighter when her energy surged, and she sometimes shook when exhaustion followed. Adam stayed close in those moments, speaking softly to her. He told her more stories of Earth, of green forests, wide oceans, and the endless sound of rain. She listened, her trembling easing each time. "You carry peace in your words," she said one evening. "It softens the fire of the cycle." My kind does not speak during it. But you bring balance. Adam realized then that survival was more than food and tools. It was about carrying each other's burdens. Myra gave him strength and senses beyond his own, while he gave her calm when her instincts threatened to overwhelm her. Together, they were something greater. One night, as the stars shone above the silent cliffs, Adam sat beside Myra outside the shelter. The sky stretched wide, endless, and cold, yet he no longer felt small beneath it. "We'll make it," he said quietly. Myra turned her glowing eyes toward him. "Yes. Alone, we would not. Together, we will." Adam nodded, a steady warmth filling his chest. For the first time since the shuttle crash, he truly believed her words. The bond of survival had been forged. Whatever lay ahead, scavengers, hunger, or the endless silence of the moon, they would face it not as two lost strangers, but as partners bound by trust. The silence of the moon had become normal for Adam and Myra. The days passed in quiet rhythm, marked by the slow work of gathering food, checking water, and guarding against scavengers. Yet beneath that rhythm was a question neither of them could ignore: would rescue ever come? Adam often searched the sky at night, staring at the endless stars. Somewhere among them, human ships still traveled. Somewhere out there, a beacon might still carry his name. But no answer had come, and each night he lowered his gaze with the same emptiness in his chest. Myra never told him to stop hoping. Instead, she sat beside him during those long nights, her glowing eyes following the same sky. Sometimes she placed her hand gently on the ground, reminding him of the life beneath them. "The universe does not move in haste," she once said. "Patience is also survival." It was on one of those nights that everything changed. Adam was adjusting the broken antenna he had been working on for weeks. He had pieced it together from scraps of the shuttle, using wires, panels, and Myra's guidance to shape a crude device. The small power cell barely lit its surface, but it was all they had. He switched it on again, expecting the faint static that had always greeted him. Instead, a sharp crackle filled the air, followed by a pulse of light from the dish. Myra turned her head sharply, her senses alert. "That sound," Adam whispered, his heart racing. "It's different." Myra closed her eyes and tilted her head, listening beyond human hearing. A slow smile touched her lips. "It is not the moon. The pattern comes from the sky." Adam's breath caught. A signal. They spent the next hours strengthening the weak antenna. Adam held it steady while Myra adjusted the wiring, her glowing fingers steady with precision. The device sparked, then steadied, sending a pulse skyward. Adam repeated the coded distress call he had memorized since the crash. When he finally set it down, his chest was tight with hope and fear. Would anyone hear? Or was it too little, too late? The answer came the next morning. A low hum shook the air, faint but growing. Adam froze, staring upward. Myra's eyes widened, the glow within them brightening. Out of the pale clouds, a distant shape appeared. At first, it looked like another shadow of rock, but slowly the truth formed: metal wings, lights along the hull, a ship descending. Adam laughed, the sound breaking free from him after so many silent days. "They found us," he shouted. Myra stood tall beside him, her face calm but her voice steady. "Your people come. The waiting ends." The ship lowered through the thin sky, kicking up dust as it landed near the cliffs. A ramp extended, and figures in protective suits hurried down. Adam recognized the emblems on their shoulders: human rescue crew. He wanted to run forward, but stopped when he looked at Myra. Her glowing eyes studied the scene with care, her expression unreadable. "They will take you home," she said softly. "And you too," Adam answered quickly. "We've come this far together. I'm not leaving you here." Myra's gaze lingered on him. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then she nodded once. "Together." The rescue team greeted Adam first, surprised and relieved to see him alive. They checked his condition, scanned his vitals, and began preparing supplies. But their eyes soon turned to Myra, whose tall figure and glowing eyes stood out against the pale rocks. Adam stepped forward before any questions could rise. "She saved me. I wouldn't be alive without her. If I leave, she comes with me." The rescuers exchanged uncertain looks, but Adam's firm voice left no room for doubt. Slowly, they nodded, extending their hands toward Myra in cautious welcome. For the first time since the crash, Adam felt the crushing weight of loneliness lift from his shoulders. He was not just a survivor, he was bringing someone back with him, proof of trust between two species. As the rescue ship lifted into the sky, Adam and Myra sat side by side, watching the barren moon shrink below them. For Adam, it was the end of a long fight for survival. For Myra, it was the first step into a world she had only heard of in stories. "You will see Earth now," Adam said, his voice warm with pride. "Forests, oceans, and skies that never end." Myra looked out of the window, her glowing eyes reflecting the stars. "And your people will see me," she answered. "Perhaps they will learn, as you did, that strength is not in one kind alone." Adam smiled, leaning back against the seat. He knew challenges would come, questions, doubts, maybe even fear. But none of that mattered now. What mattered was that they had survived, not as strangers, but as partners who had faced the silence of the moon together. The ship broke free of the thin atmosphere, entering the endless dark of space. Ahead, the stars stretched wide, filled with promise. For the first time since the crash, Adam no longer feared the silence. With Myra beside him, the silence carried meaning. It was not emptiness, it was the beginning of something new.